Hey, welcome to the Strength Athlete. This is Bryce Lewis here, and I'd like to talk a little bit about autoregulation. So we'll use autoregulation in some capacity in just about everyone's training approach. Autoregulation, auto for self, regulation for adjusting, refers to our ability to adjust the load on the barbell. And usually we determine how to make those adjustments based on either a target that we're after or how we feel. So all athletes use autoregulation in some capacities. If you're working out in the gym and things feel a little bit light, then you go up. If you're working out in the gym and things feel a little bit heavy, then you drop the weight. We've done this long before RPE was even a thing. But the great addition that Mike Tuchscherer had kind of brought to the community was to quantify this system of how good do I feel, how fast is a bar load moving, how slow is a bar load moving, so that we can have a common language between coach and athlete and a system to adjust loads going forward. So you may have seen something called RPE, which stands for rate of perceived exertion. This is a numerical system, a number from 5 or 5.5 all the way up to 10 that tells both you and us as coaches how hard a specific set was for you. We can use this for singles, we can use this for sets of 10 and so on. But the general idea is how hard was the weight? So we can use this scale to determine how hard something was. If I had 1 rep left in the tank, it was an RPE 9. If I absolutely ground out and didn't have any more in me, then it was an RPE 10. And we simply work back from there. RPE 8, 2 more reps left in the tank, RPE 7, 3 reps left in the tank, and or fairly easy if we were doing low repetition stuff, and so on, as you can read these definitions. Now, bar speed may look different. Things may look different on video than they actually feel. It's important to remember that this is a subjective rating system. This depends on how you feel specifically. So be honest with yourself. However, you can use video to kind of help determine how fast things are. But what we're really looking for is your gut reaction immediately after the set finishes on how things felt. And that is your RPE. Now, if we collect a large enough sample of data for a large enough number of athletes and ask them to rate their RPEs for sets from 12 all the way down to singles, we can get a good idea of maybe based on what someone hit on their load they rated an RPE 9 for a set of 5, maybe what percentage of their 1 rep max that load was, and we can chart that out. So let's take a look at what that might look like. This is another so-called RPE chart here. This one relates the number of repetitions across the top and the RPE across the side to what percentage of the 1 rep max the athlete might be using. So let's look at that darkest red line across the middle there. A set of 4 at RPE 7.5 might be somewhere around 82%. A set of 6 at RPE 7.5 might be 77, and onwards. We see the idea here. Now, the closer we get to single repetition, so triples and under, and the closer we get towards RPE 10, higher repetitions, the more accurate this chart gets. So we're pretty confident of the stuff up in here. The further away we go, the less accurate this gets. And it's important to note that there's quite a large amount of inter-individual variability going on here. Females and males may rate things differently. Some athletes may rate things differently based on what type of training they've been doing recently, how fatigued they are, or even general muscular composition, hormonal profiles, genetic variation, and so on. So this is really just a rough guideline here, and we're going to use this just to give you a broad estimate of what weight you might be putting on the barbell. So for instance, if I have programmed for you a triple at RPE 6, you might want to start off warming your way up to 80%. Now we'll talk about a few tips and tricks here. If you've got something like a triple at RPE 8, you'll probably want to do a few triples before that at ramping difficulty. So you may want to start below your top target and then use those warm-ups and how they feel to help you determine what top set to hit. So we're going to go over a few examples here as we go forward. So here's 3 examples of RPE and how it may show up in your actual training. The first example, we have ramping sets. So we have you doing a set of 4 at RPE 6, a set of 4 at RPE 7, and a set of 4 at RPE 8. Great. Do your best to hit these. If you overshoot or undershoot, that's perfectly acceptable. You'll get better at determining exactly what that top set is over time. It's understandable to be off sometimes. We'd rather have you undershoot than overshoot because it's easier to clean things up than to deal with that higher level of fatigue afterwards and have to make modifications to training going forward. So if you are erring, I'd like you to err on the underside rather than the overside, okay? Another example here is what we call a load drop or a fatigue percent drop. In this case, for bench press, we have you work up to a top set of 5 at RPE 8.5, and then depending on what you hit, take 7.5% of that specific load and use that for your following sets. So for instance, let's pretend that you hit 320 pounds for your top set, okay? So if you hit 320 pounds, we would simply take 320 pounds and multiply it by 92.5%. To get 296 pounds, which you'll be using on your remaining sets. That's how we might be using this type of system. Finally, we have what we call repeat sets. So 4 sets of 4 at RPE 7 simply means do your first set of 4 at RPE 7 and leave the same weight on the barbell for the remaining sets. It's usually expected that the RPE starts to rise from the first to the last set. You're accumulating fatigue, things are getting more difficult. That's understandable and expected, and we usually program with that in mind. So you may see the RPE be slightly lower at 7, so we may expect you to finish up at 8 or 8.5 or something like that on this specific exercise. For assistance work, we may give you something like a last set RPE to shoot for, or an RPE to approximate for the range of sets, or something like that. Generally speaking, the RPE will be a little higher on some of your accessories than it will be on the main lifts. If you have questions about this, please ask your coach about the nuances of autoregulation or how to track things specifically, or maybe how hard it is to sometimes hit an RPE 5 or 6 or 6.5 and how to tell the difference. Let's start those conversations, and I want to welcome you to TSA once again. Take care.